Hey, I'm Shannon Callihan, and you're listening in time.
So I guess today is a Nashville-based R&B soul singer, songwriter, and guitarist, Shannon Callihan, originally from Kentucky, but now based in Nashville and started releasing music as of last year officially, right?
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on, Shannon. How you been?
of course. Thanks for having me. I've been good despite our current circumstances,
Yeah,
being in lockdown. But honestly, I've just been trying to be as productive as possible with the downtime and just focusing on making new music.
Yeah.
cool. I mean, your website says obviously you moved to Nashville in 2016, was it?
Yes, which feels like forever ago.
I can imagine 4 years. When did it all start for you though? Like officially, when would you say you first picked up the guitar, first started singing, first started writing songs?
It's interesting for me. I'm actually a piano player to start with.
Okay.
Um, I was kind of born into a very musically talented family, so it was expected of me early on, to do something within music. So I started out with piano, naturally took to that. I took lessons for 14 years or so, and along the way, I'll say this I'll say this to anybody that I talk to. Like, if you know how to play piano, it makes learning other instruments 10 times easier. Just kind of having like that knowledge of playing piano and being able to read both clefs and whatnot. But yeah, so I started with piano, and naturally kind of took to kind of writing my own stuff along the way. But I didn't pick up guitar until I was probably 12 or 13, and I played saxophone along the way as well. So I did all of these different musical things. My journey's pretty interesting. I actually went to college for oboe. I have a minor in oboe performance of all things, which is interesting enough. But yeah, I think really when I started to write and sing was when I started playing guitar. I grew up listening to people like George Benson, Pat Metheny, all of these, well-known guitar singer-songwriters. And obviously, like, during the time that I picked up guitar, John Mayer was huge. He was that was like his
I should show
prime
this shirt
time
now.
within the music industry.
Uh,
What is it?
Oh, it's a John Mayer t-shirt. I got it when I went
Oh,
when I
nice.
when I saw him live last year in America.
Oh, you saw him live. Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
he's
great.
incredible. I saw him in Nashville actually
On
with
the
I,
same
I
tour?
guess it was his last tour. Yeah, the
Yeah, yeah.
what is it? The emoji of a wave or whatever it's called. Is that the right one?
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember what it's called. I should have
Or
known.
maybe that was a
Did it
couple
say
of
it on the
years
shirt?
ago.
I don't even know. This was one of the tour shirts, but yeah,
Yeah,
maybe it is.
I like that shirt. That's cool, man.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
but yeah, like that was, oh, no problem, no problem. But that was really like, after I started listening to him, that was when I started to like really take guitar seriously. And I remember too, like, specifically, it was his, are you guys familiar with Eric Clapton's Crossroad
Yeah.
Festival?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it was his first performance at that festival. He played his song City Love, and he had this like incredible intro to the song, and I was just like obsessed with it. And I literally spent 2 weeks after I got like that solo by ear. And just oddly enough, I just got my first actual guitar, which was a Fender Telecaster. But yeah, I think that's like when it all kind of got serious to me. But obviously, life happens, and I was in college and doing my undergrad and all these other things. And it was not until I graduated from college and moved to Nashville that I really like started to take guitar seriously, because I actually had the time to do
yeah,
so, and as well as like writing too, and just kind of being introduced to like this whole new world, because I had actually never been to Nashville before, which is crazy because, you know, Kentucky's like right next door,
I had to
basically.
check it on the
But
maps. Yeah, it's like it's like just a few hundred miles north, maybe. Is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's crazy that I'd never really been here, but I had a couple friends that lived in Nashville, and I don't know, for the longest time it never really seemed like an attainable thing to like try and be an artist, but then it just kind of clicked for me one day, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna try to do this. Why not? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really interesting. I guess, like, you know, you mentioned some great players there, including like George Benson and Pat Metheny.
Oh yeah.
Those guys have got a huge kind of jazz influence as well. You know, they're both incredible jazz players as well as artists. You know, once you got into
For
John
sure.
Mayer and started picking up the guitar more and getting, you know, really into it, did you go back and check out those players again and, you know, take something from the whole jazz side of music?
Oh yeah. I mean, so my mom, she has incredible taste in music. So I grew up listening to a lot of like jazz, R&B. Um, I just, you know, especially like singing too. You know, I love Anita Baker. She's like probably one of my favorite singer songwriters of all time. But like just that time period of music, I've always been drawn to. So it's cool to like take a lot of the things that I've learned from other guitarists and kind of like mold them into that genre, since, you know, that's kind of, you know, my bread and butter, I would say.
No, I think one of the things you mentioned before as well, with inspirations, you mentioned the Eric Clapton live performance. It's something. There's something to be said about live performances, right? Where there's always like one or two super standout performances, and you can never really pick it apart exactly why, but it will always remain in your memory, whether it's something you saw live or something you saw on YouTube. That's like just
Yeah.
a super performance. What do you think it is that makes these performances? Like, do you think there's anything in particular for you?
Um, I mean, that performance in particular, I don't know. I think it's just all about the way that it makes you feel, you know? I think that's
Yeah,
why we listen to music, is it makes us feel a certain type of way, you know? But I think it's also just like the atmosphere, like the energy you get, whether you're watching like a live performance or you're actually performing. I mean, that for me is what I enjoy the most when I'm playing live, is just like not only the energy between like myself and the crowd, but the energy between me and the band, you know?
yeah,
It's
definitely.
a much different experience, like watching and seeing something like that happen in real time rather than listening to a record, you know?
Definitely. This is something I just noted. You mentioned you minored in oboe. Now, I don't know the American
Yeah.
education system too well. What's a minor? Is that just like you've done like one module in, or like
Yeah,
a
so
you
it's kind of
trained
like,
within?
yeah, I'd say in simple terms, like it's half of a major. So I did my undergrad, which is my major,
Yeah.
in sport management. And then I did my minor in music. So like I only had to take like, you know, instead of taking music theory 1, 2, 3, and 4, I only had to take 1 and 2, music
Oh, okay.
reading, you know, kind of same way. But I still, you know, I played in the symphony, I took lessons, you know, I had to do what a major would typically do, but just not as hard, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's the it sounds more convenient. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing with like music education. Myself and Joe are actually like we used to study together, but Joe's moved to London. But like to be honest, I'd rather not be in education, but still be doing it. I think you get more value out of just experiencing it, right, than
I
studying
agree
it.
with you completely. That's why I didn't go into music education. Just because I've I've given lessons before. Actually, when I first moved to Nashville, I was giving lessons, and it's just it's not my cup of tea. Like I kind of lose the fun of it just kind of goes away from me. I'm just more of like I like to play it, you know. I'm just not a teacher. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd always wanted to do that, and I think that's kind of why I just did the performance minor degree too, just to like still do it, you know, in school and enjoy it, and also get credit for it.
Yeah.
But like my brother, for instance, he's a big music ed guy. You know, he did his undergrad, his master's, doctorate, all that good stuff, and he's, you know, director of bands at a university. But it's just never really something that I had a lot of interest in. Even when I was playing oboe in college, like at the time, you know, my goal or what I wanted to do with that was to play in the pit on Broadway. I had a lot of friends that I went to college with that, you know, toured with these national Broadway tours, and they play in the pit. And so for a while, you know, that was kind of something that I wanted to do, but I'm like very all over the place in you know, trying to figure out kind of what my purpose is and like what I wanted to do. And honestly, like doing the artist thing here in Nashville, I've never felt more like at home, you know, like I was like on the right path, I guess you could say.
I think something I want to touch on the Nashville point. One of the sort of thing you mentioned before about, you know, having learnt piano and then making every other instrument a lot easier to learn. I suppose the main thing I've got keys in the background, but I'm not a very good keys player at all. I can barely piece together a triad. But the theory is a lot easier to grasp, right? Because it's all like linearized on a keyboard.
Yeah,
Is that the main element that makes it easier to pick up other instruments?
I think so. I mean, for me, like, so a lot of what I transferred from playing piano to guitar was the chords, I guess. So it just made learning guitar chords a lot easier. And I never took lessons for guitar, and I wish I would have. I took the easy way out, I guess you could say. I learned tabs, and ever since then I was like, oh, this is so easy. Like, I'm just gonna do this. But I think in terms of like understanding progressions and chords, it just makes a lot of things easier to understand theory wise. But Nashville's different too, because they have like the number system, which I don't know how to do that. I mean, I've never kind of dove into that world. I guess I could eventually. I just never really have had the need to do that. But it's crazy to see how people pick up on things and how they actually learn how to read music. I feel like it's different whoever you talk to, you know.
It's weird, the Nashville number system. I remember seeing it, and we even had a lesson about it like some point last year. But it makes sense, but it's hard to get my head around. But that's probably just an adjustment thing, right? But what inspired your move to Nashville?
Honestly, you know, so at the time I was living in Rhode Island. I was doing an internship in Rhode Island for school. And I had a friend of mine that I went to high school with, who he's a trumpet player, and he knew of a producer here in town in Nashville. And he had kind of linked the two of us together. And, you know, he had showed some interest in potentially working, and, you know, kind of told me what all Nashville was about, you know, kind of open the door as to what Nashville could be. And, you know, that really kind of, you know, inspired me to make the move. And plus I wanted to live in a town that had some professional sports teams, because that was always a dream of mine, to work for a professional sports team. And luckily I landed a job with the Preds like right after I moved here, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with the NHL, but the Nashville Predators, they're a NHL hockey team. And so I work there, but it's also arena too. So I always wanted to do something, you know, within the sports and entertainment industry. And I figure, you know, landing a stable job like that and was, for one, a good move. And it allowed me the opportunity to pursue the music thing as well, especially being in Nashville. So, I mean, it was a number of things, I think, that pushed me to move here. But those were kind of the main two things, was like, you know, working for a professional sports team, but also being able to do the music thing as well. I mean, obviously, like, I would love to be able to do music as for, you know, full time as a career, which I think will eventually happen. But I've been very fortunate to work for an awesome organization, and that's, you know, not only been supportive of my career in sports, but also very supportive of my career as a musician as well.
I mean, it sounds like the perfect reason and opportunity to move as well. We've spoke to so many people on the podcast about Nashville, as a music
Mhm.
and everyone talks about how ridiculously stacked it is with incredible players, drums, bass, guitar, everything.
Oh yeah.
You know, what's it like being in that scene, and how do you go about, you know, selecting sessions?
Overwhelming.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, how do you go about
Yeah.
picking musicians for your band, and how do you get over the pressure of, you know, being in that situation, being in that environment?
Honestly, I say overwhelming, but it's a very cool environment. Everybody's very supportive of everybody. It's not like dog eat dog here, you know. I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of incredible players that, you know, do session work or you know, play on Broadway or in town or whatnot, but everybody's very connected. It's kind of crazy. Like it's like a domino effect, you know, like if you know this person, they know this person, oh, and that person knows this person. So it's kind of it's a really cool network to be a part of. But honestly, when it comes to like musicians and finding the right people for my band, um, I use the same players. It's so my group, um, Nate Felty, he's a drummer. He's actually one of the first people that I met when I moved to Nashville. And I met him at a gig. I was playing piano for an artist in town, and he got the call to play drums for my buddy Jethro that we were playing the gig for. And so he was kind of the first person that I met. And you know, from there, he was the one that talked me into actually like starting a band, playing my own stuff. So it was him, and then Kurt Henderson, the guitar player that plays in the group. I actually met him through Instagram. He's originally from Canada and moved to Nashville a couple years back. And from, you know, through Kurt, I met Sam, who plays bass in the group, you know. So it's kind of like a domino effect of how we met all these guys, but they're kind of like the go-tos, especially Nate and Kurt. I mean, they're very invested in this project. So rather than, you know, them being just like a hired gun, like they're very involved in anything and everything that I do, which is also very cool.
So do they get involved in the writing process as well?
So yeah, actually from the beginning, I mean, the whole reason that it's all under my name, I actually, when I first started playing with this group, I wanted to come up with a band name, and they were like, no, like, you know, I had already kind of had a following under my name on social media, and, you know, the songs that I was bringing to the table were songs that I had wrote. And so that's kind of why we, you know, just stuck with it being under my name. But now all that's kind of changed. I mean, especially with Kurt and Nate being so invested in the project, like usually if I'm writing something, I'll, you know, start to write it, but I'll end up finishing it with them. So it's been a really cool creative process as of late, because, you know, these songs that we're writing, like we're doing it all together, you know.
And I guess, you know, go on. Sorry, May, we're going to say something.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, I mean, working with these people who, like you said, are you know, some of the go-to guys in the area. They've had so much experience, you know, working with other people as well as someone as talented as yourself. How do you go about, you know, like performing the sets? Because these guys obviously are big names in Nashville, as are you. When getting together a live set and rehearsing and things like that, is there any how do I word it? Is there any process that you go through to really nail the set or nail a certain thing about the performance? Is there any choreography or things like that?
You know, honestly, we have not played live enough to even, for me to even really say. I mean,
Yeah.
We've only had a couple shows, and, you know, then COVID hit. We had a bunch of stuff planned for the summer. But you know, that's a whole world that like I'm excited to like get into that. But honestly, like I've been pretty lucky. Like these guys, they're heavy hitters, and it just, when we get together, it's not even like something we have to think about, you know. It just like flows. And that's why I love playing with these guys, because it's just, you know, everybody just knows what they're doing, and we all just kind of connect.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of fun. So it's not even really like a thought process at the moment, but I'm sure like once we start playing out more, and, you know, if there is a potential tour in the future, which I hope there is, those will be things that we can hash out together, but it's not like anything that I would be worried about.
Well, I guess you mentioned Kurt and Nate a bit there. You've also got, I think it's Sam Freund and Josh
Yeah,
Blaylock on
Sam
bass and
Sam
keys.
Sam is a killer bass player. He plays in a group called Stoop Kids in town. You should check them out. They're incredible. But he plays with a couple other people in town as well. And then Josh Blaylock, he's insane. I think people refer to him as the mayor of Nashville. Like, everybody knows who he is. Like, he plays
Jeez.
with literally everybody. But yeah, he's amazing. And like, everything aside from like their talent as like musicians, they're just incredible human beings. They're just very genuine people. So it's a lot of fun to work with each of them.
I think that's when you've got a good combination, or you've got the best chemistry, right? When they're ace musicians and they're just ace people all around. I suppose the last
Yeah.
person to mention you've got is Jude Smith. He doesn't play with you live, does he? But he's your producer.
Yeah, so Jude, we played a live set together at NAMM. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe. I don't know. I'm really bad with timelines. But yeah, no, Jude, he's been incredible. I actually met him through Kurt. And ever since then, like, we just kind of hit it off, just from a music standpoint. We love the same type of music. There was another occasion where we just, everything just kind of flowed. But he's been a lot of fun to work with on the production side of things, for sure. He's got a brilliant mind. And he's also, he's a phenomenal guitarist, producer. He literally can do it all.
Yeah, I've seen his Instagram page is pretty crazy, some of the stuff he does. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, a fun fact, I actually had a lesson with Kurt Henderson like about a year or two ago. I think it must have been 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like a one off or two, like 2 lessons or something like that. But it's really crazy, like how much I learned just in those lessons alone. But
yeah, Kurt, he just like knows his shit. He works with Guitar Mastery Intensive, as I think that's the name of the program. I don't know if that's what you went through, but he's very like devoted, like you can tell. Just
he's
the
really
way,
enthusiastic.
like we hang out pretty regularly these days, just working on music, and it's fun to listen to him talk about all of these lessons he has with all of these students, and he's very, like, his heart is in it. You can definitely tell that when you talk to him about it. Like, he's definitely devoted to teaching.
I guess from a work life.
I hope it went well, though.
Oh, what's that?
That would be awkward. I'm glad that it went well. It would be awkward if it didn't.
Imagine I just said you should consider another guitarist. That would have been awkward.
Yeah.
No, he's amazing. He's awesome. But that's something you mentioned. So you work for the NH, well, not the NHL. You work for the Nashville Predators. The
Yeah, I
NHL
do.
team. So like, how do you? I mean, this is something that I can might be able to relate to, but it sounds like you loved your job far more than I used to. But you're working like a full-time job, but doing music on the side. How do you find sort of on the work-life balance scale, like the life aspect of it? You've managed to come into Nashville and surround yourself around musicians, right? Where it's very easy to just be like, oh well, I'm here in Nashville. The only people I know are these people I work with, so these are my friends now. How did you find like sort of breaking that mold and just getting straight into the music scene?
Well, I mean, when I first moved here, everybody was talking about writers' rounds and co-writing and all of these other things that I just like wasn't very familiar with. So honestly, I just started going to writers' rounds and started networking and meeting people, and that's really how things kind of started. The ball started rolling for me. Because like I had mentioned earlier, I met Nate through playing a piano gig for my buddy Jethro. And so Jethro, he was one of the first people I met in Nashville as well. And I met him in a writer's round. So honestly, it was just like kind of just diving in, you know, like after I first moved here, and kind of figuring out what the scene was and meeting all these people. And I will say, like, it took me a while to like kind of find that underground R&B scene in town, you know, because there's so much country in this town, and a lot of the writer rounds you go to, it's the majority is country, pop, and whatnot. So it took me a little bit to like find the R&B scene, but I think that was just a matter of like finding the right people, you know.
You mentioned it a few times, writers rounds. What's that exactly?
So basically, a lot of restaurants, venues in Nashville, they will have live music, of course. And basically what it is you're on stage with 2 to 3 other people. It's usually just, you know, acoustic guitar. And you kind of just go in a round. So like I'd play a song, the next person would play a song, and we just kind of like, usually you get like 3 to 4 songs that you get to play it around. But that's basically all that it is. And it's cool too. I mean, you meet people that way, you know, different artists in town. So it's kind of how you get your foot in the door, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned that, it just reminded me of an event that we've got in Birmingham. I've moved to London now, but when me and Amir used to study together, we were kind of the only ones in our friendship group that were really into jazz and neo soul and that kind of vibe. And there's this one event every first Monday of the month called Neighborhood, and it's just where all the coolest and most incredible players meet, you know, and get on stage and just jam it out, and it's pure improvised. I mean, we weren't at the level, you know, to get up when we first started going. You know, it's so scary. Have you ever, you know, experienced anything like that in Nashville? You know, these epic jam sessions with incredible players.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a couple of them that I'm familiar with that are like definitely like the R&B, where you just show up and anybody can hop in and play. But you know what? That gives me anxiety.
Me too.
Yeah, everyone.
I love to go. I love to go to those and watch. It's incredible to me to like watch somebody just like be able to go up and play whatever, you know, comes to mind. And I wish I had the ability to do that, but it's a little out of my comfort zone, I guess, especially like where I can't just like somebody be like, this is the key to songs and let's just jam. I can do that, but it's more of like listening. Like I have to hear it, you know. I can't just, where I don't know a lot of the theory with guitar, it kind of makes that a little bit more difficult for me to be able to do. But I'd love to potentially be able to do it,
Exactly.
you know, or have more confidence to do something like that. But I just like to go and observe.
Yeah, no, me. I mean, it's the same for us. Really, we'd love to go, but I've only ever played at one, and it was just the most terrifying experience of my entire life. You can go up and they can you know, whisper the chords in your ear really quickly and tell you the key, you know, give you an idea of what to play. But then, you know, halfway through they'll just modulate, and it's like, wait, what am I doing now? And I think in a scene like Nashville, which is so stacked with such incredible players, how do you know? I mean, I think like you've managed to do it, because we've been listening to your music this week and really enjoyed all of it. How do you get that original sound in a scene that's so populated with, you know, similar genres and incredible musicians? How do you find that unique voice?
You know, I don't even know, to be honest. I think you know, when I moved here, I was trying to do the whole co-writing country pop stuff, and obviously it's not really true to my upbringing or like the music that I am truly in love with. But you know, I think I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I obviously moved here and saw what everybody else was doing and felt the need to do that as well, just because everybody else was doing it. But I wasn't really having a lot of success, and you know, I just kind of stuck to my guns and made the type of music that I love. You know, I wasn't really worried about if something was going to be on the radio or if it wasn't mainstream enough or whatever. I just, you know, I wanted to make the music that I enjoyed listening to, and, you know, which is a lot of that old R&B, neo soul. And a lot of people say like Nashville it's a country town, and it is, but there's a lot of really great other genres, you know, in this town as well. Which I think is kind of popped up in the last 5 to 10 years, I'd say. Here, it's not. I feel like the majority is not necessarily like country anymore. There's so many other genres, which is cool.
Something we talk to a lot of our American guests about is the sort of I don't want to say love triangle. What am I about? The music triangle in America, where you've got LA, New York, and then you got Nashville, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
like we always ask them, what is it that draws you to one of these scenes? Have you ever been tempted to LA or New York?
You know, I really haven't. I love to go to LA and visit. I have a lot of friends that are musicians that live out there. But honestly, I'm really happy in Nashville. I love you know, it's got that southern charm. It's a big city, but at the same time, it feels really small. And especially like most of my friends are here. I think I can do whatever I need to do musically here. I don't feel the need to like move to LA. I just don't think that would really benefit me as of right now. I mean, granted, if I were to like sign with the label and they were like, we need you to move to LA, like no problem, like I'll be there. But yeah, I don't know. I really like Nashville. I love New York as well. I love New York. I go there any chance I get. But honestly, I don't know, Nashville it feels like home to me. And I wonder too if it maybe has something to do with like being from Kentucky and you know, not being too far from like where I grew up. But you're also close to you're close to Atlanta here. You're there, everything, it's kind of a central location, which is nice as well. But I don't know, man. I love it. I love the people. I love the music scene. It's just a good time.
It makes sense. We'll have to clip the part where you say like if any labels want me, just hit me up. I'll go to LA. We'll like at record labels. And,
yeah,
somehow
hit me up. Yeah. But also writing too. I didn't mention that. Like, Nashville's a great time or it's a great town for co-writing, which I've been getting into a lot more. So I love that aspect of it too. But I mean, granted, like I think the way things are now with everybody doing things virtually and virtually co-writing, I think it doesn't really matter where you're at right now anyway.
Yeah, I had this discussion a few months, well, probably at the start of lockdown or just before, like with one of my teachers, which is just like, you know, the music industry sort of flipped on its head, where a lot of these labels are probably realizing now that they don't need to pay these expenses for people, and they don't need to pay for these fancy studios as often as they probably do, because people can just record remotely now.
Oh yeah, and we do that. I mean, that's how we've recorded our past, well, all of our singles. They've been in my house. So
that's perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean it's crazy how everything's very DIY, I guess you could say. But I think it all depends on like who you have mixing, and like, you know, the person that's going to be doing all the mixing and mastering, like making sure that they have the experience necessary to like make recording in a home studio work efficiently. But so far, I think for us, like, we like it, you know, because there's so many other factors that play into not having to use a studio. You're not having to feel like you're on some type of time crunch and you're paying all of this money for this room to record in. So it's nice having the luxury to record at your home because you're not on a time crunch and you're just, you know, playing music with your buddies in your house, you know.
I guess it can be quite freeing as well, because I mean, not every producer is like this, but a few producers get a bit too, sometimes can get a bit too involved and, you know, change I don't know about you, but I've sometimes felt pressured by producers to, you know, change the song, add bits that I don't really want to add, and take out bits that I really didn't want to take out.
Yeah.
Doing it yourself, it just allows you to be completely honest and open with the song, and, you know, put out exactly what you want to put out.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've had a really great experience working with Jude, because I think for the stuff that or the music that I make, like, we're using like real instruments, you know. We're, you know, playing, especially like when we record, the process is usually like we'll get the drum and the bass tracks, and then we'll kind of work off of that. But that's like basically laying the fundamentals for us, the groundwork. And then we'll just work off of that. And usually like Kurt and I will get together and we'll do our guitars, and you know, Blaylock, he'll do his piano, and we'll kind of just use parts that we want. But I mean, Jude, we're all kind of on the same page musically of what we want. So we've never really had the issue of like disagreeing on things, because we're all on the same page. So
I guess
been pretty lucky with that.
Sort of flipping Joe's point on its head, you mentioned you do some co-writing, so I'm assuming that's you're writing for other people there, not necessarily like co-writing your own work. Or...
I'm getting into it more. I liked for my stuff, I've just been so used to writing on my own. But our last single release, Love You Right, Kurt and I actually wrote that together, but we wrote it for somebody else. It was kind of an opportunity that came up, to pitch a song for an artist that had just signed with a label that I had been speaking with. And it was a really cool opportunity. Was very fortunate to do that. And it was kind of like a win-win situation, because we wrote the song and we really loved it. And, you know, we pitched it, but fortunately they didn't want the song. So we were, you know, it was just kind of like instant, like that's going to be our next release, because we were so into it.
Yeah, it's sick.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to write, but that actually was, you know, we wrote that for somebody else.
Yeah. How do you find it though, writing for someone else? Because, you know, where Joe was saying like he's with producers sort of telling him what to put in and take out and stuff like that. But how do you find it with like seeing someone else's vision for a song, almost, like, you know? Yeah.
I feel like I'm typically pretty open, I guess, when it comes to that. I think, you know, everybody has different skill sets and can provide something different to something. You know, so I feel like I'm pretty easygoing in that aspect. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Like,
yeah, I've
only done a couple co-writes, and, you know, a lot of the co-writes that I was doing previously when I first moved to Nashville was with, you know, the same person. So I think it's all about finding someone that you mesh well with, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I'm also pretty like set on my ways too. Like, if I'm writing a song, like wanting it to be a certain way. But I don't know. It's a tough.
What is it that informs you of the song? So like, would you have a discussion with the singer or the other co-writer, just like, you know, what's the topic of the song, and then what sort of vibe you're going for? How does that dialogue go?
Honestly, like any co-write that I've done, I've had like an idea that I've brought to the table. And I've been very lucky in this as well, as like I've kind of had something that I had in mind. And we just kind of worked off of that. So I really can't even say, you know, what that is like, because I haven't really had to do that yet. I usually come up with, like, if I'm going to a write or, you know, whatever that may be, I always have like at least like a verse chorus or a guitar part or something lyrically to kind of work off of, as I'm sure most co-writers do. But I've never really had to like start from scratch, honestly.
I mean, I guess, you know, if you're collaborating with people and there's, you know, there's multiple people throwing ideas into the basket, you know, to create a new tune, sometimes you're going to get good ideas, and sometimes you're going to get ideas that, you know, some people like and some people don't like. Do you think there's a specific way to address that, and, you know, how to tell someone that their part's not right? Because I feel like sometimes when co-writing, I've experienced this myself, I've come up with a bad part, and sometimes you get offended if someone doesn't like it, but in reality it doesn't fit right. And if you don't like what someone else plays, how on earth do you go about telling them?
You don't. No, I'm kidding. There again, I feel like with the group too, especially like, writing my own stuff, it's like we all kind of listen to the same stuff, and it's like I instantly know like that they're gonna like this, or I'm writing it because I'm thinking of them in mind. And when I say them, I mean Kurt and Nate. But honestly, like the other day, Kurt and I, we were working on a song, and I had played it for him, and he was like, what if we did this progression for the bridge? And it was just like, yeah, like it's awesome. Like it just works. But I've been fortunate enough to say that like I have never really came to a group right with them or a rehearsal and, felt like a part wasn't good enough. I think when you have great musicians that work so well together, it's kind of non-existent in a way. But I mean, there will be times where there's little things that we disagree on, but I think we've been pretty good as a group to like kind of come to terms with things.
I think what you just said was perfect. It goes really well with that. It's a healthy way to look at it. If you've got something, it's good, and someone else comes up, you show it to someone, and they've got a better solution, or they suggest something that fits more. And that's the healthiest way to look at it. You don't need to inform them about their part, but offer them something in return, something constructive, to improve the song maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm always open to their creative vision, because this is their group as well, so I'm always open to that. Plus I think it's more fun too, like instead of just writing a song by yourself, I think it's more fun to like write it with people that kind of have the same views as myself. But yeah, I don't have any juicy stories of writes gone bad yet. Hopefully I don't.
Hopefully not.
But I'm definitely not the type of person that's going to be like, if I don't like something, I'm not going to be like, that sounds like shit. I'm going to, be like, well, why don't we do it this way? Or, why don't we try this aspect, or, try it from this angle. I like to steer clear of any tension or confrontation, so I will be as nice as possible.
Definitely. I guess one of the songs that you've co-written or written is this I suppose it picked up quite a bit of traction with Jude Smith, Treat You Better. I mean, it started off, I remember hearing the riff or the lick that you guys started off with just as an instrument. Yeah. and then you re-released it as like it's not really single because it didn't come out like as an official release, did it? It just went up on YouTube.
Yeah, so we did that on purpose too. I mean, we obviously that started from an Instagram clip, which was the first time that I'd actually met Jude. He had I think he had just done a video with Kurt, actually, like a Christmas Instagram little collab video. And he had reached out to me and was like, hey, would you be interested in getting together and maybe doing a guitar video? And of course, I'd already been a fan of his and was totally down. And so we did that video, and it did so well. I mean, it got like 3 million views or something like that. It was kind of incredible. And so we were like, we got to do something with this. So we ended up getting together and, writing the full song, which is what you see on YouTube. But that kind of came from, I don't know if you're familiar with Tom Misch at all.
Yeah.
So he did a video with FKJ, and they released it only on YouTube. And I believe this year he actually finally released that track on Spotify. But we kind of did it from like a marketing angle of kind of boosting our fan base through YouTube. Because we had already had a pretty decent following on Instagram, and we're just trying to, kind of boost up some fan engagement through YouTube. And that was kind of the motive for that, of only releasing it on YouTube. But I will say we are planning to actually release it as a track
So
next year. So that's
nice.
something that I'm looking forward to. I think we both were just like, let's wait till next year. Hopefully things are somewhat, back to normal.
Yeah.
With the music industry. But yeah, that was kind of the whole motive of that. But it's done really well. I love that song.
No, it's such like I mean, I suppose it is with a lot of your hooks, but like it's such a it's got such a groove to it straight away
Yeah,
as well, and it must be fun to play as well because it's yeah,
it's so much fun to play. So much fun.
oh, that's it. I guess one of your other songs, "Ain't Got No Money," which
Hmm.
like also really big fan of, but one of the lines in it that's stuck out for me: "The more I work, the less I dream." Uh, yeah, I can instantly relate to that. But
I know. Well, that the whole point of that song was writing something that people could relate to, and I
yeah,
feel like, that line, which basically is what the song is about, is like I feel like there's so many people that are stuck in these jobs that they hate, and a lot of times it's because they, don't really have an out. They have to pay their bills and,
yeah,
put food on the table for their families, but they're spending all of this time working in a job that, they don't really get much satisfaction out of, or they're not able to pursue what their true dreams are.
yeah.
And that's kind of what I wanted that song to be about. I mean, obviously, like, the hook is "Ain't Got No Money." Like, yeah, we can all relate to that, but it's a much deeper song, I feel like, than just not having any money. But relatable. That was what I was going for, and it seems to have done well.
It 100% is very relatable, especially the "Ain't Got No Money" part. But I think the that line in particular that I mentioned, it was, I mean, before I went to study music, which I still don't 100% believe in, having a piece of paper to prove that you can play an instrument or whatever. But
Yeah.
I was like working a full-time job. I was working out on sites and stuff, like
Mhm.
it's contracting work, that's it. But like for having very little time to actually work on being more of a musician, just because of stupid hours and stuff.
Yeah.
So like that's what I mean. That line is just like, oh shit. Every day I was working, it's just like the dream's just dying. The dream's just dying.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah, I
I
was like,
I think
screw it. Quit.
we've all kind of felt that way at
Yeah,
one point in time. I mean, I know I have for sure. And it sucks, because it's taken away time from you, like, honing in on your craft and
yeah.
building your skill set to do what you really want to do. But, you know, life is expensive. So,
Life is expensive, definitely.
How do you get yourself out of that, mindset? Because we've all been there. You all go through a rut, where you have a great month and then you have a terrible month where nothing seems to be coming
mhm.
together. But how do you bring yourself out of that?
I think it's just like, for me anyway, it's always looking for, whether it's music or discovering like a new artist. I
Mm.
think it's always just like finding some type of inspiration, um always really like kind of keeps me on my toes. And granted, like I'll get home from work and I'll be exhausted and not want to practice or anything, but I think like, when I'm at work, I'm usually listening to music, like, I'm just kind of like surrounding myself in music, so like when I get home, I can make a pot of coffee so I'll stay awake, and I can,
Yeah,
like, focus on writing, or meet up with guys and work on music. But I think, true, like, if you're truly passionate about something, you'll do whatever it takes to make it work.
I
But
mean,
you definitely have to find a balance for sure.
yeah, I mean, it kind of goes alongside that. But you mentioned then, you work a full day. You sometimes, you want to, when you get home, you don't really want to be practicing scales and arpeggios and metronome work and things like that.
Mhm.
I remember when I had a lesson with a jazz guitarist at the Birmingham Conservatoire, which is one of the top music schools in the UK. And
Nice.
one of the first questions he asked me was, "How often do you practice?" And I told him 4 hours a day. And he said, "And what does that involve?" And I said, "It's a lot of improvising to backing tracks and playing music
Mhm.
And then I said, and then I do bits of scale work and arpeggios. And he said, that's playing, not practicing. But I always found myself slightly disagreeing with him, because half of music for me is the passion and the feel and the energy. And then the other half is the framework, the fundamentals, the theory, the work that you have to put in. So, what's your approach to practicing? Do you think that it is all about, knowing your scales and everything, or can it generally just be playing your guitar?
I agree with you, honestly. Yeah. I think the theory part is definitely important. Mm-hmm. But scales, when I play guitar, I don't play scales. I probably should, but I don't. But I do basically what you do. Like, I listen to music that I like and I try to jam over it and, find different melodic lines that sound good. And I think for me, it's all about like the feeling for sure. So when I sit down to practice, I don't really do a lot of the fundamentals like I probably should. I'll just like learn, different like jazz standards, or I think for me too, like if I really want to work on guitar, I'll play something like I'll learn like a jazz standard, because I feel like that really helps my playing, just because jazz is hard as shit. So like that's for me, like if I'm sitting down to practice, like I want to learn something new. So for me, that's kind of how I practice, or just jamming over songs and working on my ear as well, I think is just as important as like doing theory. I think like being able to like hear something is just as more beneficial.
I think this goes to the same effect as to what both you guys just said as well. But I was just watching a clip of Jacob Collier the other day, and someone asked him a question of, how do you remain technical on all the instruments that you play? Because you play like basically every instrument under the sun. And his answer was like, I don't necessarily practice technique, but practice through playing, just, continue playing. So, not saying because Jacob Collier said it's gospel, but it is pretty much Jacob Collier said it, so it's got to be true.
True. That dude lives and breathes music. I don't think he leaves his studio. I think he just sits in the studio all day and just like, this time I'll play this instrument, and then after lunch I'll play this instrument.
Maybe he's
crazy.
Just like living the Truman Show, but like from a musical genius.
Yes.
He's just it's like a big experiment.
That's funny.
That would be pretty cool. I wish it was me though.
I know, me too. To have that kind of talent and just like that dedication, it's pretty incredible. He's amazing.
He shared something the other day, just on his Instagram story about it was Kevin Carter did this like Instagram TV clip about comparing and competing as musicians, and how it's such an unhealthy approach to take, because he didn't necessarily say like, oh, this is why you shouldn't compare to me, but he was just saying everyone sort of needs to hear this, because everyone does need to hear it. You shouldn't be like in general, all of us shouldn't really be comparing to each other, because we all come from different backgrounds, right? Which is the fun part of it as well. It's cool to have different perspectives on the same thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely on like not comparing yourself to other people. Because I feel like too, like that can just take you down a deep hole of like insecurity in what you're doing. And I think everybody's doing something different, or, we're all different people. So I think it's important to like kind of stay true to yourself and not worry about what everybody's doing around you, especially in the music industry.
I guess from a comparison competition point, or from that sort of angle, something which I suppose it's quite unfortunate that it's the case, but you're sort of like a female guitarist, I guess, in quite a male dominated sector, right?
Yeah.
How do you find it? I'm assuming misogyny is like still quite a big problem for you as well.
I guess, but I don't know. I honestly haven't put much thought into it. I know that it's a male dominated industry, but I also did my undergrad in sport management, which is also a male dominated, so I've been used to that. But there's a lot of really great female guitarists
Definitely.
that are out there doing it. I mean, I've discovered a lot of them through social media, but I don't know. I mean, I think for me, I mean, I do play guitar, but I consider myself more so just an artist, a singer-songwriter. Like, I haven't really like focused too much on saying that I'm just a guitar player, because I'm
Yeah, I
not
guess so.
really,
Yeah.
I'm not really out there trying to be like a touring guitarist, although I have done that. And it's been fun. Like, I've enjoyed, the opportunities that have came from being that lead guitar player. But that's not really something that I'm going for, I guess. So I don't really think about, it that much as like me
Yeah,
being in
yeah.
a male dominated industry. If
No,
that
I
makes
think
any sense.
no, that definitely does. Like, it's definitely not like a conscious thing, I guess. I
Yeah.
suppose going back to your songwriting, I was like listening through the songs. I mean, you haven't released too many, I guess, because you've only started releasing since last year, right? Um,
Hmm.
like I'm making an assumption here, or this is what I sort of mentioned to Joe. Like, I always try to figure out like, oh, what's their approach to songwriting, and in general. And for me, it feels like your music might be coming from like you start at the hook. Have I got that right?
It varies, but yeah.
Yeah,
Usually it's a hook, like a guitar hook or something. But lately I've been writing a lot with piano.
yeah,
But yeah, usually it's like either a vocal hook or like a instrumental hook
yeah.
for
No,
me.
I
that's
think starting with the hook, allows you to flesh the song out easier. If you start with a chord progression and then you know that you need a hook for the chorus, or something like that, that's when it starts to get hard to write something. But when
Yeah.
it comes natural, the hook comes naturally. It feels so much easier to flesh out the rest of the song.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's a lot of these songs too that we release, like they have come from, I do a lot on Instagram with guitar content and like coming up with interesting, riffs and whatnot for these 1 minute clips. And I don't want that to be wasted. So there's been several songs that have come from like those guitar clips, using like the riffs that I had come up for those videos specifically. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. Like, and sometimes it's a chord progression, but also hearing like a lyric vocal melody. But for me, the majority of the time, when I sit down to write a song, I start with the music first rather than lyrics. Just so I feel like when you hear a progression, or whether it's major or minor or whatever, I feel like a lot of times that can kind of set the mood for like what the song should be about.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess that's really interesting because writing that way, it just like I said before, it's so much more efficient than other ways of looking at it. I guess before we start to wrap up, one of the things that me and Amir noticed when doing some research on you, that we're not too sure what's going on with it really, but Guitar Live are doing the guitar.com are doing a live festival next week.
Yeah.
You're working with and you're doing a show for, right?
So it's myself, Kurt Henderson, Horace Bray, and Nicholas Van Glue. I probably pronounced his last name wrong. I don't know how to say it. But we're doing a panel for guitar.com, I guess for their virtual conference or whatever they're calling it. But basically, it's a panel where we talk about what it's like um, building an artist, or like, I guess essentially like being an artist in today's digital age.
Yeah,
So it's a lot of like, marketing your brand, social media, all that fun stuff. But we're not technically playing, at least I'm not. But it's more so just a panel of us talking about what it's like to be an artist in the music industry in today's digital age, to sum it up for you.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I
Yeah,
guess.
no, it's very cool. Like just, you know, being affiliated with the lineup of players that are going to be a part of the virtual conference. It's very cool to like see my name on there with like, you know, Santana and St. Vincent and all these like huge guitar players. It's kind of surreal.
I mean, it's a very it's a really good topic to have as well on their panel. Just it's a new form of, I don't know if it's a new form of streaming or income, but it's a new way of getting yourself out there as a musician, right? And I suppose it's really
Yeah.
important to do it right in terms of the way you project yourself, marketing and
Hmm.
public image and everything.
Yeah, for
It's a
sure.
cool concept. How is 2021 looking for Shannon Lauren Callahan's releases?
It's very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Like I'd mentioned earlier, we're working in the studio the end of this year or 2020. So still kind of figuring out if we're wanting to put out an EP or kind of do the single game
Yeah,
like we have been. But it's fun to like, you know, have all of these songs that have just kind of been in the vault for so long and
yeah,
you know, getting them out there. So really that's going to be my main focus for this next year. I mean, I'd love to play some shows live, but I feel like right now things are kind of unknown in that department of, you know, when we'll be able to like go to shows and have concerts again.
are you having gigs?
But
Like, are there any gigs happening in States?
um, I think like I know on Broadway, they're having, you know, some bands playing the bars,
Yeah,
but most of the venues that I play in town, they're not really doing any shows. And if anything, they're having like a band in to play, but doing like a live stream to Facebook, but they're not actually having like people at the bar.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it just kind of depends on what how things progress with COVID and what that's looking like. But for next year, I'd love to you know get some shows on the books,
this,
which I'm sure we'll do, and just work on
yeah,
releasing some more bops, if you
definitely.
will.
No, this year's been a write-off. I'm meant to be playing a gig in 2 days. Well, technically it's like midnight Monday here, so it's like evening time for you on a Sunday still, I guess.
Yeah, it is 6 o'clock. What time is it there?
10 minutes past 12.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
I'm
It's,
sorry.
no, it's fine. It's fine. My bedtime has been well and truly screwed since lockdown, so it's good.
Same,
I used to go
same
to bed at
here.
like 10:30. I was such a baby, but um, the yeah, like I mean, I was meant to have a gig on Tuesday, the 29th of September, but
Mhm.
the like my friend in the band, she's just sent a message saying her friend's contracted COVID, so gigs
Yeah,
basically going to be off because she's been in contact with her in the last few days. I was like,
yeah,
oh
it
shit.
sucks, dude.
It's fine. I suppose it's part of the
But
deal
I
if
mean,
you're trying to get a
that's
gig off.
good though, that
Oh
they're
yeah,
like, you know, being
being
safe about it
responsible,
and not
definitely. Yeah,
exposing you to potentially
yeah,
something. So I mean, that's good that they're like being sensitive to that, but it
yeah.
does suck, you know, because
It's
I think I don't know about you guys, but like I'm just like antsy. Like I'm just ready to get out and
Yeah.
start playing shows again and
Me too.
going to the bar, you know, going to see a friend, hanging out at the bar, which they've opened a lot of like restaurant bars in town, which is nice.
yeah,
Thankfully there's a lot of bars that have like outdoor areas. So I've been hitting those up pretty frequent, but
yeah.
um
What's
anywho.
it can't be too different to the UK. Actually, I was just thinking because like the UK, like drinking culture or just pub culture is like it's part of the identity of being a British person. But
Yeah.
like,
What do you
what's
all do if you're not at the pub?
yeah, exactly.
Not a lot. It's
Twiddle your thumbs.
Yeah,
It's kind of the same here though. Like, you know, when you think of Nashville and music, like people go to bars, you know, they go out for a drink, they go to hear
yeah,
music, you know, it's very part of the culture.
yeah, definitely.
So,
I wish we had more like just more of, like sort of like a Nashville scene, I guess.
yeah.
It's
Have
just
you guys
more
ever
live
been?
music. No, I've been to America twice. Been to Miami and I've been to New York.
Nice.
Miami
cool.
was a bit of an awkward one, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, Miami is an interesting.
Yeah, I got held for a few
culture.
hours there. I got detained at the airport.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. They weren't
Dang.
very nice to me, but it is what it is.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you guys anymore
No,
if it's past midnight.
No, that's cool. I mean, we'll wrap up the episode. Thanks for coming on, Shannon, and yeah, everyone check
Thanks
out
for
music.
having me.
This will come out towards the end of December, so hopefully, hopefully you've got more news and updates on music by then. Hopefully we see you in the UK for a gig. If not, we'll
I
go
would
across to the US.
I would love that. I've never been, and it would be a pleasure.
That would be amazing. And we look forward to seeing it. Hopefully it will happen next year, or if not the year after. But thanks for coming on. Yeah. All right. Thanks everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to host you on the show, guys. Check out Shannon Lauren Callihan on Instagram and YouTube and everything, and Spotify, and then check us out as well. And like the video, download on Spotify and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.